Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Pack. This is Clint, and welcome back to the Pack and Clint show here on the Total Coverage Sports Network. Today, we saw, if you guys didn't see it, Ghost recently announced that we were rebranding to the Total Coverage Sports. Please go subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow the Twitter, go do all that stuff, like, tweet, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We really appreciate all the support. We got a pretty loaded show today. We're going to be doing some recaps of some of the games from this past week. We're going to be talking about some of the games from last week. And then we're going to have our good friend on, Aggie Boy, also known as Carl. And he's going to help us kind of talk about some of the games last week. And then we're also going to be able to talk to him about what he sees upcoming for the coming games this next Saturday. So, Clint, how are you?
Doing good, man. Just ready to dive in.
Yeah, so we're going to start off with maybe a game that's not so fun for you and I to talk about, which is Texas and UTEP. Obviously, not the performance that you're looking for, especially coming off a so-so performance against in week two, and I felt like you didn't get to see a lot of the things that you wanted to see improve upon, especially in the pass game. Some of the run game stuff wasn't great in terms of saw a lot of guys getting put on their face, not doing a good job reaching the second level as offensive linemen. Defensively, good as always. You kind of come to expect that now, which is a little paradoxical considering who our head coach is. But yeah, it's kind of a little bit frustrating. Anything else you got to add to that, Clint?
Yeah, I mean the defense, as we all expected, was gonna be really good. They've been pretty lights out the entire season, so I wasn't really worried too much about that. Wasn't really too much looking for something that I wanted to see from that. Just wanted to see them continue to do what they've been doing. Offensively, yeah, for sure. We have yet to see truly what we want to see this season. The big thing is the big elephant in the room, the passing game. For Sark to resort to, I think he ran it like 50 times or something, like around that number. And for us to have to get away from the passing game and just run the entire second half because we aren't executing the passing game, namely Arch's accuracy, it's a little bit concerning because we only have one more game of prep and then we have the bye week, and then right after that we have to go to the swamp and then the rest of our SEC play. So that's something that I want to see get clean very quick, and hopefully this Saturday we can see some sort of improvement and see maybe a game plan switch or just a game plan switch offensively, just so we can see something that may work and something that gives us some confidence going into SEC play.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point you made about how you want to see some improvement from Arch this week, because to me, it's just as much about how he plays and how confident he feels. If he doesn't play well on Saturday against Sam Houston, and then you go and play two really good defenses in Florida and OU, I think you get into a situation where if he doesn't play well, you might be really destroying his confidence, and you're not going to be able to get that back over the course of a season. So to me, it's just as important from a confidence standpoint, just in Arch himself, than an overall just we need to play better. You also need it for the sake of Arch, and if you want to have any title hopes or any playoff hopes, you need him to be confident and feeling good about what he's doing.
No, 100%. But we should hopefully see some improvement because I've looked at Sam Houston a lot. I have a buddy who is on the coaching staff there, and because I've watched all those games, I have gotten a good sense of their defense, and they have not been a good defense at all this year. I mean, if you look at the point totals that they've given up in their three losses, they gave up 41 to Western Kentucky, they gave up 38 to UNLV, and they gave up 37 to Hawaii. So that should be a real good opportunity for Arch to bounce back, and hopefully he can take advantage of that. If he can't, then I would definitely be worried and a little bit concerned.
Yeah, I think that's well said. So now we're actually going to talk about the team that Texas is going to play in about 3 or 4 weeks in Florida. They just had a game down in Death Valley against LSU. Really low scoring game, 20-10. I think that was a game you and I both correctly predicted the winner on. What were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, it was somewhat of what I expected. I didn't expect a super high scoring game. I expected something of more of a defensive matchup just because, as you and I have talked about, Ben Roberts is a very good defensive coordinator, and the way he schemes up games is one of the best in the country. And I also have seen LSU's mainly secondary, especially in that Clemson game. That secondary has been amazing. The linebacking core has been a much improved. I would love to see that pass rush maybe get a little bit improved and tweaked up, but other than that, I expected a defensive game. I didn't expect DJ Lagway to throw 5 interceptions, though. I mean, that was the biggest shock to me. I mean, you can talk about LSU's inability to run the ball. You can talk about Garrett Nussmeier still not being necessarily what LSU's looking for, but I cannot remember the last time I've seen a quarterback throw 5 interceptions in a game, just point blank period. So I don't know what that means for Florida going forward, because obviously in the offseason he didn't practice much because he was held back with an injury. So that's obviously going to do something to you when it comes to time to play games, and especially playing a team like LSU so early in the season. I don't know. That shocked me, and I mean, I expected LSU to win. They did, but yeah, I have nothing else to say to that, dude.
Yeah, I'm just going to touch on some of the things you said. When I was shocked by how bad Lagway played. It wasn't just really poor decision making. It was he clearly didn't know what he was looking at. He wasn't operating the pocket well. He wasn't being accurate. It felt like it was all systems failure for him, and that wasn't something that I'd expected going to the season. Maybe that's just a fault of mine where I kind of bought into the offseason hype, and I think this is something that we're seeing with a lot of quarterbacks right now is that offseason hype doesn't match what we've seen from a production standpoint, which is maybe a more broad conversation that we can get into another day. Then moving on to the LSU offense, I think you said it really well. I thought Ron Roberts called a really good game. I thought he did a really good job of showing different coverages to Nussmeier, consistently changing the picture. I think that's a really talented defense. Obviously, they got Caleb Banks back, and he does a lot of really good things for them in terms of how they're going to play their front, his ability to stop the run and create pressures. So to me, it wasn't as much that LSU struggled. I think that's obviously something that happened, but I think it was a struggle that was induced because Florida's got a really good defense. And then going to the other side, I continue to be really impressed by Harold Perkins and Blake Baker, especially their usage of Harold Perkins. Last season, I was pretty avid that I didn't think he could work at Star. And I think they've done a really good job of moving him around, using him almost as a Swiss Army knife, where they're not really asking him to play a lot of coverage stuff. They're using him as a spy, as a blitzer. They're having him play as a zone drop defender. They're doing different things to really maximize him in a way that I think has worked really well and has unlocked that defense because they've got really good DBs. Mansour Delane's done an incredible job this year. If you look on Twitter and you look up his name, you can find just tons of clips of him playing incredible coverage. So I think they've got a really good defense. It's one that I'm really excited to go watch against Ole Miss because that'll be a really, really fun matchup to see how Blake Baker and Lane Kiffin face off and kind of see what that looks like. And then now the last game we're going to talk about before we head over to Notre Dame and A&M is the 2:30 game that we saw, a really, really fun game between Georgia and Tennessee, really high scoring. I don't think either you or I expected that. We saw Joey Aguilar look like a baller. You also saw Gunnar Stockton make some really, really big plays. The fourth and sixth throw to London Humphreys being the obvious example of that. It was a really fun game to watch, really interesting to study. On Sunday, I went and I watched all of the snaps on the All 22. I charted everything. I went super in depth about it. I got about 7 or 8 pages of notes, and it was just a really fun matchup between Heupel and Schumann, where you saw Heupel do one thing and then Schumann counter, and then Heupel adjusted, and then Schumann got the last punch in. But I thought those were two really, really good teams, and two teams that I think are definitely playoff worthy.
No, man. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. I like you said, none of us were expecting a high scoring game. My prediction was 23-20, and I was very adamant on that. I did not think that it was more so the fact I didn't think that Glenn Schumann would allow 41 points to Tennessee or really any team. For to be fair, both those quarterbacks, Gunnar Stockton and Joey Aguilar, were two quarterbacks that I admittedly was not very high on. I was kind of hard on them just from the tape I've seen and from um, just kind of the overall narrative on them from the preseason. But those two dudes, yes, Saturday, they completely they completely changed my mind. Joey Aguilar, he is a I mean he's a dog. He is an amazing quarterback. I mean, just looking at the stat line, 24 for 36, 371 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and dang near had 100 QBR. I mean, that was probably the dude I was the most hard on, to be completely honest. So I was very impressed with him. Gunnar Stockton, he played amazing too. He made critical plays and big moments during the games. Whenever it was late in the game and he had to come up clutch, he did it. Like you said, that one pass on 4th and 9 or whatever the distance it was, with 2 minutes left to tie the game. Yeah, I mean that was a thriller. That was a game of the year candidate for me. Um, Unfortunately for Tennessee, they were just one kick away from winning that game. It's Yeah, both those teams are going to be huge players in the SEC for the season. I could see both teams making it to the SEC championship. I could see either winning it, to be completely honest. I think both, to be fair, have a championship caliber roster. And then the last point I want to go on is the point you made about Heupel. Heupel was also someone that I wasn't super high on going into the season. And I mean, the way he's schemed up this offense just the past 3 games, I mean, they're on track for one of the best offenses I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you made about Heupel. I think that for me, that was the thing that I came away most impressed by. If you watched them last year, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, it's a very simple offense in the sense of its wide choice. Your outsiders, you're pretty much playing with super wide splits. It's all about numbers in the box. There's no screen game. There's no motion. There's not a lot of true creativity. A lot of it is we're going to run inside zone if we have good numbers in the box. And if we don't have good numbers in the box, we're going to run option routes, and that's it. It's going to be a hitch, a go route, or a post. We're not going to run a lot of different route concepts. And this year, you've seen a really big difference to that, where their splits aren't always as wide. So they're able to run more screens. They're able to run more motion. They're able to run a little bit more gap scheme, which you saw them do a lot against Georgia. In particular, this was a comment I made when I was watching the game. So Georgia lined up in what's known as a mint front, which just means they're playing with a zero technique and then 2 4 eyes and a jack. And what Tennessee kept doing was they would get 3 strong with the tight end off the ball, but attached to the line of scrimmage. And what would happen was they would run GT counter towards the tight end. And because there was no hard edge for Georgia to set, Tennessee kept running the pullers and counter towards a middle linebacker and then a safety. And eventually you saw them get hit with a 30-yard gain because of it. And those are small things that in the past Heupel wasn't able to do. They weren't a super heavy gap scheme team the way they are this year. You didn't see a lot of creativity where you saw a whole lot of that against Saturday. And that to me was the most impressive thing, especially right now when a lot of the conversation about Texas is how it kind of feels like the offense is super bogged down and there's not a lot of creativity anymore. To see someone else do a lot of the stuff that Sark's doing, but then add on another level and add on different wrinkles, I thought was super impressive. And it makes you really think that there's always something you can improve upon and there's always something that Sark can add. And that almost makes me excited because when I know that offensive coaches are adding something new, I know Sark's studying them and I know he's trying to figure out ways to incorporate that. So even if it's not directly related to Texas, I think you can treat it as good news.
Yeah, man, I agree with that, and I think you make a good point too. Adding on to the Heupel conversation, where back in the previous years, he ran a very simple offense, and he didn't run as much of the different passing concepts that he's running now. And I think a lot of that has to do with the quarterbacks that he was giving. Granted, Hendon Hooker was a good quarterback at Tennessee. I'm not taking anything from that, but Joey Aguilar has the IQ, and I think the he just has the overall football brain to be able to run the type of offense that Heupel is now incorporating. He also has the skill to, because Joe Milton, he was not the greatest quarterback, and Nico, he wasn't either. I mean, we're definitely seeing that now as he's at UCLA and hasn't really done much at all. So, I mean, yeah, I'm impressed with Heupel, and I'm excited to see what he can do for the rest of the year.
How you doing, Joshy? I'm good. We're just talking about some of the games from this past week. Obviously, that Texas game didn't go as we hoped, and there's some stuff that has to be cleaned up from pretty much every side of the coin offensively, whether it's Arch just getting through his reads, being accurate, playing with good anticipation, to the offensive line doing a better job blocking. A lot of stuff to clean up, but you've also got some encouraging signs. I thought that, especially in the second half, I thought Arch did a really good job of going through his progressions, and in general, I thought he made good decisions. It's just he's got to be more accurate. And then the defense again was a highlight. And then after that, pretty much just talked about Florida LSU, and then we talked just now about Georgia Tennessee, and we're now going to get into what I think was the most surprising and most fun result of the week, which was Notre Dame versus A&M, and a really, really fun finish.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, that was game of the week for me. I had it going into the weekend, the game of the week for me, and it delivered on every single level. I mean, the first drive of the game, you have Notre Dame block a punt to get a touchdown. You have Mario Craver that game go for 200 plus receiving yards. You got Marcel Reed playing one of the best games he's ever played in his career so far. I mean, and then A&M surprisingly was able to stop the run on some occasions. Obviously, they weren't the best. They haven't been the best all season, but they were able to get some stops when they needed to. And just the last second touchdown from Marcel to, I don't know how to pronounce that tight end's last name, but yeah, that guy. And for that dude to get his first touchdown since 2022, I remember them saying. I mean, dude, that was an amazing game, and just overall, I was super impressed with A&M. I'm super impressed with how Colin Klein called that game. I think I've never expected from a Colin Klein offense to see a passing game that was that effective, to see a passing game that was that open, and to see the receivers get the separation they did. Um, Obviously, Moore, he's the best cornerback in the nation. I know you think that. Um, and he played good, but the rest of the secondary, they got beat pretty bad. And Notre Dame's defense this year does not look anything like I thought it was going to look this season. So yeah, A&M looks like a real contender, and not I wouldn't say they're one of the top contenders, but they definitely are a contender. I think they can definitely make a playoff run if they can not lose any games that they're not supposed to. And I'm excited to see this offense the rest of the season.
Yeah, and so to help us kind of break down that game, we brought our good friend, Aggie Boy, also known as Carl. I saw Yap was asking earlier about Aggie Boy or Carl. This is him. We're gonna give him a. There he is. He was at the game, which is super cool. We're gonna get his kind of experience going to South Bend and seeing that game live, and then we're also gonna go eventually talk about some of the X's and O's and kind of what happened in that game and what made it so impressive from an A&M standpoint. But I got to ask Carl, how are you? How was South Bend, and how you been?
Thanks for having me on, guys. It was pretty cool. South Bend was great. I still, as you can hear, my voice is still kind of coming back. That was definitely outside of 74-72. I think that was the best A&M football game I've ever seen on TV or in person. South Bend was great. The weather is beautiful. Indiana itself is beautiful, and that was a beautiful football game in a lot of ways on a Saturday night. It's a gorgeous stadium, gorgeous campus. It's just, and we were talking. Me and my friends were like, if the United States just had like a national university, it would probably be Notre Dame. It was great, but the game was awesome.
I,
Yeah, you were there, so you saw it even better than I did. But I was really impressed with Marcel Reed. I had talked, you and I were talking about it after the game, and when I was watching the tape, I thought he made a lot of strides as a passer, even in small things where you can tell that there's still some work in progress. All of the stuff that we were talking about over the summer that he needs to improve upon, you've seen some tangible growth in those, whether it's from a processing standpoint and being able to see multiple route concepts and not staying on one, to being a little bit more patient in the pocket and not looking to dart immediately, to being a bit more accurate with the football. I thought you saw all of those things on display. I thought his decision making in general was good. And then obviously you can't talk about that game without talking about Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion, who are really, really good football players and they're electric with the ball in their hands.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you know the stigma of Texas A&M football over the last 10 years plus, but really the past 10 years is, well, they can get all these great recruits, all these five stars, but they can't do anything with them. So I think I know a lot of us and a large part of the country, really, that game on Saturday night was, we know you have the guys. Can you prove that you can develop them into blossoming and improving? And I think you saw that, um, especially with Mario Craver. And then something, Pat, we talked about this, like you said, but I think a lot of those moments last year, Marcel Reed, maybe his first read's not there and he's gone. Like last night, he doesn't have 360 yards if that game was last year. And you could tell too in a couple of those dropbacks, his first guy wouldn't be there, and you could sense that he wanted to go, but he kind of forced himself to stay in the pocket. And a lot of the times he'd make the right decision. One of the things that I really like about his game so far through the first three, is that he's not really trying to force anything when he does get outside of the pocket. He'll get outside, he'll try to make something happen, but 90% of the time he's throwing the ball out of bounds, which I think if he's going to survive this year, if Texas A&M is going to have their starting quarterback last 12 games for the first time since 2020, he's going to have to do that. But it was lots of big X's and O's that went into that game. I think the biggest one for me was, you look 12 months ago, Texas A&M and Notre Dame at home. A&M had zero explosive plays that game. Not one play in that game went over 20 yards a year ago. We had 8 Saturday. Only one play a year ago went more than 10 plays or more than 10 yards, and it was the first play of the game on a 15-yard completion to Trey Watson.
Wow.
We had 8 plays of 20 yards or more, and we had 6 plays of 10 yards or more. Um, Another thing too, I've been talking about this the entire summer, where the A&M's receivers this year are a huge threat after the catch. If you still don't believe that, watch the tape of how the Notre Dame defense is playing. They are stacking the box because you still have to worry about guys like um, Ruben Owens and Le'Veon Moss and Marcel Reed as a runner. But then now you've got guys that can run all over the field. And so they were forced to stack the box, and the nickel kind of all night had to make a decision. Am I coming up to take away the bubble screen, or am I going to play back? And then what I really liked about KC is he would kind of feel that open zone, and a lot of the times he would just sit in it. A couple times Marcel made an errant throw, but if your off night is 360 yards and 2 touchdowns, I mean, we can work with that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you made about pretty much all of it. But I really like the point about how they were leveraging the nickel because a lot of the times, and I talk about this a lot personally, the worst thing you can do for a nickel is put him in both run support and give him a vertical carry because that's a lot of conflict. And I felt like A&M consistently did that to those nickels. And it doesn't help when you've got Mario Craver aligned from the nickel, and Mario Craver is one of the best route runners you'll see in the entire country, and he's a yak monster. Like,
Mhm.
it was a really, really good job of not only hunting matchups, but also just putting guys in good positions and letting your guys win. I was really impressed by Colin Klein. I think that just some of the stuff he was doing. There's that one clip where Casey Concepcion, I think, is wide open on a deep over, and it's just because Colin Klein is consistently getting to one concept to force Notre Dame into a cover three shell. And once he knows he's getting a cover three shell with 5-man pressure, he knows that the deep over is going to run to grass. And it's like so many of those times, it felt like Colin Klein just had the perfect call lined up, and that doesn't happen by mistake. That's a really good play caller, and that's someone who knows what he's looking at. That's someone who has a quarterback that he's comfortable with and a quarterback who he thinks he can win with, which I think is a really scary sign for the rest of the SEC because this is going to be a super explosive offense. And if they're putting up 35 plus points in SEC play, they don't need to have an excellent defense. They just have to hold teams under 30 and they win a lot of games. And that's not something that a lot of teams right now have.
Yeah. A crazy thing too is Notre Dame was so worried about the quick out and the bubble screen, and we ran 0 plays, 0 bubble screens or quick outs that entire game. Every single thing was vertical. I think Mike Elko said it best. We trusted that we would win vertically, and that's exactly what they did all night long. So it was really impressive to watch.
I just want to make a point of what you said earlier about looking back at the game from last year where you had 0 explosive plays because I was there at that game. I watched that game and I saw every play happen. And yeah, it's actually funny too because yesterday I was looking at last year's game compared to this year's game just to see the differences. And I mean, it was night and day. When you have the differences with Connor Weigman and Marcel Reed, the capabilities you have with your offense is night and day. And it definitely shows you that you get the it definitely shows you how much of a difference the receivers you got from last year with Jade Walker, Jabri Barber, Noah Thomas, what their skill sets are, and what Mario Craver, Concepcion, and even Bussy and ABR at times can bring you. I mean, it allows you to run a totally different offense and a totally how you want to run it, which I think this is really how Colin Klein wants to run his offense. I think when he has the talent and he has the personnel to do it, I mean, he can be a really good play caller. So I'm impressed with that. I don't see it slowing down anytime soon, to be completely honest.
Yeah. And tons of people have said it, but it takes a lot to come in and get your offense going in the first year. And I think we saw a lot of growing pains last year. Uh, our yards after catch leader last year in 13 games was Noah Thomas with 230 yards. Mario Craver had 136 on Saturday night alone. So, I mean, I think Colin Klein got exactly the personnel he wanted, and he is showing you that if you want to put 7 in the box and play everything in front of you, that's fine. We'll just beat you over the top every single time. And I mean, you guys watch the game. If Marcel hits 3 or 4 of those deep balls, we're looking at a 500-yard game. I don't think because they would have had a 97-yard touchdown from the 3-yard line. KC beat his guy bad, and then we run a play. I think it was the first play out of half. It was the second drive that we had after Notre Dame went up 10 out of half.
Yeah.
They got a man look, and it was Amari Niblack on Drake Bowen, and it was a complete mismatch. He ran a fake out double move wheel up the sideline, and Marcel missed him by about a yard and a half, but it would have been another 60-yard touchdown. So I mean, a couple of those that he hits, and like that is a generational 500-yard, 5 touchdown performance. So, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to add, because I know a lot of the talking points from the Notre Dame side after was that it's not a great defense and all of this stuff about Chris Ash. That's still a really talented DB room, right? Like, it doesn't matter that they may have been in cover three a lot or cover two. It doesn't really matter. That's a really good DB room. It's filled
yeah,
with a bunch of really smart, really athletic football players that are going to play in the NFL. And to drop 380 yards and realistically probably could have had actually 500, that tells you the level of play calling and the level of confidence and the level of play that you're getting from the A&M offense.
yeah. And I think I thought I told you this last week, Pack, but when you look at Marcel Reed's tape this year, it's not so much as he is making the wrong read still. It's he is making the right read. It's just the throws are a little errant still, and that's something that you can fix. If it
Yeah.
was, he's panicking, he's taking off when he shouldn't, he's not sitting in the pocket, he's not navigating the pocket, then I think you'd be a lot more worried than you are. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, 45% completion percentage with 360 yards and 2 touchdowns, you can work with that.
Yeah, and then we can talk a little bit about the A&M defense before we head on to predicting some of these games. I thought
Yeah,
there's some room for improvement. Obviously,
definitely.
again, I think that I think one of the things that a lot of people have to understand, and I don't think this is Elko's fault yet, is, and I looked at this earlier today. It's really hard to have a really good defense your first 2 years as a DC because you need to have your athletes, right? Like, you need to have guys that fit your system. You have to have guys who can run what you want to run. This is why when you watch Oregon the past 3 years, it's not like they've always got an awesome defense, and they've got one of the best defensive minds in the entire country in Dan Lanning. Alco's a really good defensive mind, but some of this is going to take some time. Some of it's just going to be, we'll have some growing pains while he's trying to get his system to work and getting his guys in there. Because it's hard when you've got guys that don't fit what you want to do and you have to completely rebuild your system and try to make all these things work. Where Mike Elko wants to run a lot more stunts. He wants to game the front and be exotic. And maybe he doesn't have the guys for that yet, or guys aren't super comfortable with that. Um, Carl, you and I have talked extensively about how Torian York's not a great athlete, right? Like, he's a really smart football player, but he's not a guy who's running a 4.5 or a 4.4. Stuff like that can be influential in terms of what you're doing with your defense. And so I think that a lot of the stuff you'll see get better as the year goes on. But what was super impressive was the DB play. Des Ricks looks incredible. I
Yeah.
thought he played with tremendous technique from an eye control standpoint, from a mirroring standpoint, from doing a good job staying level, staying balanced. A lot of it's really, really good tape from Des Ricks. I thought the other corners and the other nickel and the two safeties played a good game. I thought that, like, the stats won't look great from a pass game perspective, but outside of, I think, one play to Jaden Greathouse and then two like schemed up plays, they kept everything in front of them. It was, you're gonna have to dink and dunk your way to scores, and that wins you football games because most teams, and we're seeing this with A&M, like, explosives win you football games. If you can force teams to have to play slow and have to be methodical and go 10 plays and have to score on those and execute perfectly on 10 plays, 95% of the time that's not going to happen. And I think that's what they're doing a really good job of this year compared to last year, where you saw a ton of explosive last year. That's maybe not the case so much, especially in the pass game right now.
Yeah. And just to go a little bit deeper too, you first of all, Des Ricks, wow. Like if you would have sat there in December of this past year and told me that Des Ricks in the matter of 6 months is going to blossom into a truly elite cornerback, I would have said, okay, like I don't really believe you, but okay. Because I think the size and the athleticism has never been the question there. I think at times last year it was just instinct. He looked uncomfortable running the defense, which is normal for a first year. And Will Lee, Des Ricks, Marcus Ratcliffe, all three transfers. It's very tough to learn a defense in a year, much less all play together for the first time. I think the DBs especially look much more confident running the defense. Um, I think that Will Lee's stats after that game are a bit misleading to those who didn't watch the game. Most of the catches that were attributed to him were in like a cover three type defense where he is playing in front of them. And CJ Carr just dropped the beauty right behind his head that you can't really do much other than give him credit. I think CJ Carr played a great game, kind of doing exactly what you said, throwing the ball in the exact right over the second level, just in front of the third level. So a lot of those got attributed to Will Lee, but big plays that I immediately third and goal from like the 4 yard line. Des Ricks, huge pass break up on the slant,
Yeah.
didn't bite at all on the out. That was elite. And then Will Lee did the exact same thing in the first half. Um, when you look at the run defense, and then I know this is going to be interesting for a lot of people to hear. One of the biggest questions coming into this year was the defensive line. How is the defensive line going to be? And Pack, we talked in like July, and I told you, I said our defensive line overall is better than it was last year because they're much deeper. You've got we stacked talent a little bit better. The room isn't heavier, so we're going to get to rotate more guys on and off the field. I think that was on display Saturday night when you look at rotating in the defensive tackles. I mean, Albert Regis, Tyler O, and DJ Hicks played an outstanding game. If you sat here, I don't know the numbers, but if you sat here and told me that their win rate was 100%, I'd probably be like, yeah, it probably was, because it just seemed like, especially Albert and DJ, were in the backfield almost every play. I think Cassius played a great game. We saw a good game from TJ Searcy for the first time, where he was really kind of showing what he was brought over here from Florida to do. I think the problem with our run defense right now is the run fit. The run fit from the second level specifically. I think if the defensive line doesn't get a hand or causes the running back to change direction, that's when you're going to see the 10 and 20-yard runs, because the second and third level is still iffy on the correct run fit. And you can tell when you look at, like, watch Drake Bowen run fit, watch the Notre Dame safeties and linebackers run fit versus what we did. I think we had somewhat success at times because our defensive line played really well. But yeah, the run fit's got to get better if we want to improve.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The one thing I'll add too, and this is one of my like gripes about Alco, is when he just lets you out your D line play. I think you guys do a really, really good job. Like I've watched that tape back 2 or 3 times now, and I felt like most of the explosives were, one, like you mentioned, not great run fits from linebackers, but two, also you're just in a stunt that's working away from where the ball ends up hitting, and it's like it's not like the D line's playing bad, and some of it's not on the linebackers. It's just you're being exotic with your front, and that stuff can happen. That's been my like big gripe with Elko is sometimes I just wish he'd let your dudes be dudes and just win up front because you've got really good players. And maybe that's just something that he'll grow into. Maybe it's something that they'll add some stuff to clean that up. But that was like the one thing that I said, this is something that I have a note on going forward is how are they going to adapt to those two things? Because I have a little bit of question about that. But outside of that, I thought it was a good performance from both sides. Last thing I kind of want to talk about this game is kind of go into what Josh you mentioned, which is what will Marcel Reed look like against a better pass rush? We'll obviously get an answer to that because they play LSU I think in late October.
Yeah,
And then they
25th.
and then they play obviously Texas at the end of November on that Friday. And SC's got a really good pass rusher. They've got the best one in the country in Dylan Stewart. So they'll have some good tests on there, and we'll get a pretty good answer to that question.
I think too that just right off the top of my head, number one, I think that they thought that we were just better. Our offensive line was just going to be better than their defensive line this game. So they ran a lot of long developing, deep routes that game. I think when we play Texas and LSU and SC, you're not going to see a lot of those, double moves or the deep crossers that KC was running or the deep wheel routes. That's just not going to happen. But they, Colin Klein trusted our offensive line to win against their D line, and they did.
Yeah, I think it's a good point where you may not run as many like 5-step, 7-step drop stuff. You might be looking at a little bit more like 3-step, 3-step, 3-step on 3 snaps. And then, okay, now we'll try and look for an explosive, or you're going to pick your spots a little bit more. You're not always looking at a home run just because you're going to face some better D lines where you can't do that all the time. But I think that's something that Colin Klein obviously knows. And I think you'll see that materialize. I think that's a really good point you made. So now we took a while talking about that game, but can you blame us?
Yeah.
So we're gonna move on to talking about some of the games from that are gonna be this weekend. We're gonna start with Utah and Texas Tech. If anyone wants to start us off, feel free.
Yeah, I can start us off. So for that game, we got number 17 Texas Tech, number 16 Utah, 11 a.m. on Fox Central. This is gonna be a game of pure offense, in my opinion. I don't see much defense being a factor at all in this. You have two amazing quarterbacks who have played great thus far. You have Baron Morton, who in just 3 games so far has thrown for 923 yards and 11 touchdowns with only 1 interception. On the other side, you have Utah transfer quarterback from New Mexico, Devin Dampier. Hasn't thrown as much nearly, but he's also the team's leading rusher too with 200 rushing yards so far. Both teams in their 3 games that they played so far have been pure dominant. Utah, obviously, first game going on the road or I don't know if it was on the road or at home, but they just absolutely demolished UCLA. And then got 2 good wins after that. And then Texas Tech, the offense has just been firing on all cylinders. You haven't seen anything stop yet at all. I think this is going to be a very interesting game with this. I think that Utah, from what I've seen in the past at least, is it's not the biggest stadium, but it is a very good environment for teams that go in there. And what I've seen from the past in Texas Tech, just under Joey McGuire, is that they don't necessarily play amazing on the road. They don't ever really do well on hostile environments. I want to say Texas Tech's going to win this only because I think this is the best team that they've had probably since 2008 with the team Mike Leach had. I think that the defense is probably the best they've had since then, even though it wasn't even great back then. But still, they just have one of the best teams in the Big 12. And I think that at the end of the day, it's going to come down to Baron Morton showing why he's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. I think he personally is. I think that the offense I don't think it'll really take a step back this game. I think that Texas Tech will come out on top. I think that they'll probably win about, I want to say 47-41. I think it's going to be somewhat of that type of game. But I'm very excited to see that game, and I think that it's going to be a really good game either way, but I got Tech winning that.
Yeah, I a lot of the same. I think Tech has a super explosive offense. You look at both teams; they've both played like a mid to decent Power 4 team, and 2 kind of just gimme games. And both of those teams have played very well. Tech is an explosive offense. I think if there's one thing Utah's defense has done well, it's defended the pass. Their front 7 could be a factor. Utah's Tech hasn't really been tested at all. Tech's going to have to establish the run. if they want to win this game. They're obviously their game through the air is electric, but if they want to win this game, especially in a hostile environment on the road, they're going to have to establish the run. Um, I think my key stat to this game is Tech's averaging 4.3 points per drive, and Utah's defense is only giving up 0.8 yards per drive. Given Utah's defense played probably the worst power forward quarterback in the country in Nico, but still. I do have Tech winning this one 31-30, close game. I think they get it done. And the road woes of Joey, he finally gets over him.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be the lone wolf on this one. I'm gonna take Utah, and I think for this one, it's kind of simple for me. I just kind of trust Kyle Whittingham more than I trust Joey McGuire, and this game is in Utah. I think I also trust Dampier a little bit more than I trust Morton right now. Um, I think you guys make really good points, and I'm not someone who's going to pretend like I'm grinding the tape on either one of these two teams. I know a little bit about the rosters. Tech's got a really good D line with Lee Hunter and David Bailey, two guys that'll be NFL players. It's just for me, I trust that, especially after two bad seasons at Utah. I think this is the year that they get it right. I think this is the year that they kind of show that they are the class of the Big 12. So I'm just going to lean on that until I'm wrong, and I'm going to pick Utah.
Yeah, I went back and forth, but I think the fact that it's at 11, I was like, Tech is probably going to be able to.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that very much. So now we're going to move on to Tulane and Ole Miss, which I think for all of us is going to be fairly straightforward. The more interesting conversation about that game is almost who does Ole Miss start, because the D2 transfer Chambliss played against, I think it was Arkansas, and he looked really, really good. Looked significantly better than anything we've seen of Austin Simmons. To me, I think Ole Miss wins regardless of who they start. But to me, the most interesting part of that game is just who do they start?
I mean, we were talking about this earlier, and I'm agreeing with you there. I think you need to start Chambliss. I mean, for him to come in to his first start, and honestly, it was actually his first game action. He had a little bit of action versus Georgia State, but either way, for him to come in his first start and throw for 353 yards against an SEC opponent and have a QBR 90, and I mean, just put aside the stats. He just looked incredible during the game. He looked very calm during the game. He looked like he had already been a starter. He looked like he had run that offense before. I mean, he looks way more of a confident leader than Austin Simmons has looked all season. He looks like he understands the plays more. He understands what his reads are, and he executed on an elite level Saturday. So I would say you need to start Chambliss, but yeah, I agree with you on that point, though, that either quarterback who they start, they're going to win the game. I think Tulane's a good team. I think that Jake Retzlaff is a good quarterback. I think he's done good with them so far. But I think it's just going to be the overall talent difference that you see at a school like Ole Miss, at a school like Tulane, that is going to be the real difference maker in this. And also, one other point I want to make is that I'm not very confident in Tulane's defenses necessarily because, yeah, the first game they only gave up 3 points to Northwestern, but I mean that's not really saying much. No disrespect to Northwestern, but I mean Preston Stone has looked pretty bad this year, and the other two games they won only by 2 against South Alabama, and then they gave up 31 points that game, and then they gave up 27 to Duke, which Mensa's not horrible, but he's not anything elite. And I think when they see Chambliss and they see the weapons that he has surrounding him, I think it's going to be too much for them to handle, and I don't think they're going to be able to keep up.
Yeah, exactly what Pack said. It doesn't matter who they start. I mean, they could roll out whoever they want, and they're going to win the game by 3 scores. Tulane, a point about Mensah is you got to remember he came from Tulane, so they know his tendencies a little bit more than anyone else. So they won that game, but you're right. Tulane's defense looks questionable at best. They give up almost 2 points a play. think Ole Miss or play 2 points to drive. Sorry, I think Ole Miss top 3 offense in the country right now. The only thing that could make this game interesting is if Tulane, who is a very good running team right now, they have 3 guys that have over 100 yards on the season. If they can run the ball against a questionable Ole Miss defense, I think at halftime you could look and it's 21-13 Ole Miss, and you're like, is this game worth turning on? And then it'll probably end up like 41 or 42-20 or something like that. And you're like, well, Ole Miss they'll win the game, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have a guy go for 150 yards or they have 200 total rushing yards.
Yeah, I think that you made a really good point about the Ole Miss run defense. It's not great. The tape's not good. I don't think the stats are very good. Nothing about it looks very pretty right now, and that's something that Pete Golden and that staff's going to have to do a really good job of figuring out. Which, speaking of a staff that is in over their heads, that's what Florida looks like right now, and they're going down to Coral Gables to play Miami, and I think this might be a drubbing. I'm not sure this game's going to be very competitive. Um, I think you're going to see a Florida team who's kind of laid down and has accepted that their season's probably over.
Yeah, I agree there completely. I've never seen Billy Napier as someone who can. I mean, despite what they did last year, I've never seen him as a coach who can really rally his guys whenever stuff hits the fan and they have to. I mean, their season might be over and they just need to play for pride. From what I saw last week, I think their defense is good. I'm not concerned about their defense. I think they'll be solid all season. I just think that offense, I think DJ Lagway, that doing what he did last week has got to shoot your confidence at some level. I mean, you can't throw 5 interceptions and not have it affect you at all. And Miami's defense is really good. Their pass rush is amazing. I think their secondary is good. And on some levels, I think that they have somewhat of a better defense in terms of the pass rush than LSU. So I think, and the fact that they were able to get pressure on Lagway like that on Saturday, I couldn't imagine what he's going to be like on next Saturday when they go to Miami. I think Carson Beck's an amazing quarterback. We've had this discussion before. I think their offense is very lethal. And I really don't see a world where Florida wins this, to be completely honest, unless Carson Beck gets injured and the backup just has a horrific outing. I think this is probably going to be the most lopsided game out of the selections that we have here.
Yeah, I want to be a Florida believer so bad. And I picked this game and I really looked at what they did in their 3 previous games before Pack sent that earlier where a couple of their coaches are suspended. But I think when you look at Miami's defense, exactly what you said, Ruben Bain is the X factor, maybe the X factor in the United States. Like, he is that guy. Miami can create negative drives when they get you behind the line of scrimmage early, but I think we've seen them struggle when teams start to go tempo on them. When Notre Dame found their success in Coral Gables, that second half, when they started going tempo, Miami looked beatable, and I think they were. Notre Dame scored 17 points in the third or fourth quarter, I can't remember. But if you get those pass rushers tired, then you can do some damage. Now, we're talking about an offense in Florida that's one of the most inefficient offenses in the SEC. I mean, certain times Jaden Ball looks unstoppable, and then certain times it looks like the play caller is calling plays looking at a wall. It's just they're so hit or miss. If Florida can limit explosive plays from Miami and they themselves can get a few explosive plays, I think it can be close and I think it can be interesting. And I'm not saying, this is a road game for Miami or it's a road game for Florida, but it's a couple hours away. I do think Florida is going to keep it close. I actually had Miami by 4 in this game, but it depends on what Lagway we're going to see.
Yeah, Joshy, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a huge fan of Carson Beck. I think a lot of the stuff last year, you can kind of like when you view it in context, like some of the picks are guys are busting routes, guys are dropping passes. It's a really bad O line. I think that last year was kind of a combination of a lot of different things. I think that the 2023 version of Carson Beck is like the real version of him. I think he's an amazing processor. He's really, really smart. He's really good in the pocket. Um, so maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe he does play terrible against Florida, and Miami loses because of it. But I think he's kind of put that behind him.
Yeah, I think last year their best athlete, not running back, was Arian Smith, and some days he would just randomly decide he didn't want to catch the football. So
Yeah. So then now we're going to talk about a former Georgia commit, actually. Speaking of Arian Carter, we have Dylan Raiola and Nebraska hosting the Michigan Wolverines. For me, this is a game that I could see going so many different ways. It's really exciting just because you have two really young quarterbacks, two really highly touted guys. I think both were ranked top 10 in their respective national rankings. Rayola had a little bit of a disappointing freshman year. I thought he's put on some pretty good tape. And then I thought Bryce Underwood, outside of that OU game, which, I mean, you're facing a Brent Venables defense in your first road start. That's never going to go super well. So I don't really blame him for that. But this is, to me, a really good litmus test for him because this is a good Nebraska team. And I'm curious to see what that'll look like. I'll take Nebraska. I think this is the year that Matt Rule gets it done. I think they're going to be good this year. I'm a believer in Dylan Raiola, and I think you're going to see some of the growing pains from Bryce Underwood on Saturday.
So,
yeah.
oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So this game was probably the hardest for me originally to sum up and try and think of a winner. But when I really started looking into the teams and watching their past games, I noticed one big glaring thing between the two teams, and that was Nebraska's run defense and how it's not been very good this year. They've given up 100 plus rush yards in each game. Against Cincinnati in the first game, they gave up 200 plus rush yards. And you have a running back at Michigan who Justice Haynes, who's one of the best in the country in my opinion. He's gotten over. I think right now he has almost 400 rushing yards, and he's averaging about 8 yards per carry. So I just think if Michigan can establish a run, and if Nebraska's not able to stop it, I think it could get. I wouldn't say ugly, but I think Michigan can win by 2 scores. I think it being in Lincoln, though, it definitely will have somewhat of a factor as that fan base goes down. They make that environment hostile every single week. So I think if they can establish the run, I think Bryce Underwood will be good. I think that he can be comfortable and that'll open up the pass game for them. But also Dylan Raiola is the other factor with that too, because he's looked pretty damn good this season. He's looked pretty efficient in all 3 of his starts. Granted, other than Cincinnati, they played Akron, and I think it was, gosh, I can't remember the other one. Either way, he's looked good, but I think it's all going to come down to the running game between Michigan and Nebraska's ability to stop it. And I haven't seen Nebraska really be able to stop that running game. And I think Justice Haynes will have a big game, and I see Michigan winning that one.
Yeah, I think everything you just said, Clint, I am the exact opposite for some reason. I think this game, the difference will be the new playmakers Nebraska has at receiver. I think it being in Lincoln, and I think Matt Rule is going to outcoach Sharon Moore. The Nebraska corners are extremely solid. I think their pass efficiency or their defensive pass efficiency is top 5 in the country. If Michigan cannot run the ball, like it's going to get ugly, like 31-10 type of ugly, and not for Michigan. So I took Nebraska by 2 touchdowns. I think this is Matt Rule's game. I think this is Dylan Raiola's game, and this is just going to bury Michigan, at least for this year. And also, I don't think either of y'all brought it up, but Michigan's receivers are like bad. They are not good at all. So I don't realistically, you could probably put 7 in the box, stop the run, and the corners are going to be fine because Michigan does not have a single game breaker at receiver.
I think that's a really good point. I didn't really think about that until you mentioned it, but I mean, it's not a very good wide receiver room at all. They don't have a single guy who you feel comfortable putting on a one-on-one in an island and trusting them to win. I think that's a really good point. It does make me nervous for Michigan because if Nebraska can put 7 in the box and just dedicate themselves to stopping the run, and they feel like they can cover outside, you could almost see what happened against OU, where all of a sudden they're sending 6-man pressures, 5-man pressures, and Bryce Underwood is running for his life, and he's not seeing it very well. I think there's a possibility for that. I think it's a good call by you, which
Yeah, I
brings
think
us
this is
to our last game.
gonna
Actually,
be the classic Big Ten game where it's just slow, low scoring, but some teams somehow wins by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I forgot to talk about the Michigan receivers and really look at them. I think I was counting on the run game to really work, but if that doesn't work, yeah, my prediction is going to look very bad.
so we're now going to move on to our last game of the week. It's Jackson Arnold. I believe he's returning to OU now, going where he was for I think 2 seasons. A really bad last season, so kind of a revenge game for him. I'll just be honest, guys. I don't think he's going to get revenge. I think it's going to look terrible for him. I think OU's going to put that offense in a box. I think Brent Venables is going to shut down the RPO stuff that Hugh Freeze really loves to do. And I think you're going to see some turnovers from Jackson Arnold. I think you could be seeing something like 41-10. Like I don't really see this game being all that competitive. I'm a big fan of John Mateer. I think he's going to do a good job of making plays, extending, making good decisions generally. The only way this game is close to me is if Mateer throws 2 or 3 picks and something goes really wrong with the run game. But outside of that, I think OU's a better team, and I think they're uniquely built to stop what Auburn's lifeline is.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with everything you just said. I don't think this game is going to be close at all. I think that Oklahoma might have the best defense they've had under Brent Venables as of like at all. Yeah, they have not had a good defense most years with him, and this year just against Michigan, which I get Sharon Moore is not the best play caller. They have not really been very efficient on the offense, but he's looked very solid, and that whole defense has looked very solid. And also John Mateer, I think that they are going to, and we've talked about this, that Auburn does not have a very good secondary. I think that John Mateer is going to have a field day with that defense. I think that he is going to continue to show people why he is currently in the Heisman conversation. He reminds me a lot of Baker Mayfield with how he plays. I said that in last week's pod, but it just amazes me with the similarities between them two. I think that Oklahoma's weapons that John Mateer has to work with, I think that they're going to exploit that defense a lot. I think that Jackson Arnold, his big thing is being able to open up the run for him to be able to run the ball. He kind of plays like a very kind of a similar style to Haynes King, in my opinion, to where you see him run the ball a lot and carry the rock. I don't think he's going to be able to do that. And I honestly think anytime that they face a team that has some semblance of a rush defense, he's not going to be able to do much. We saw it last year. Granted, they had a lot of receivers and other weapons hurt, but he wasn't able to do much. He was very ineffective in the just offense overall. So I don't see it being close. I think that we're going to see that happen a lot with Auburn this year, to be completely honest. And I think OU wins big. I'd say probably about 45-13.
Yeah, I want to add one thing because you mentioned the secondary, and I forgot to. They gave up almost 420 yards against Sawyer Robertson, and that was the only quarterback they faced. And I think John Mateer is just as good as Sawyer Robertson. and I think OU's got a significantly better defense. So if you're giving up 400 yards to Sawyer Robertson, you're probably giving up 350 to Mateer, and I don't know what that's going to look like if you're giving up 350 yards and Jackson Arnold's like safety valve isn't there. Like you're going to need a really big game from Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton and all those receivers, and you're going to have to be able to run the ball. And I don't know because I've only ever seen one team in the past 2 years have success running the ball against OU, and that was Texas in the Red River last year. In general, Venables does a really good job against the run. They do a really good job with how they utilize their backers, and they're going to throw a lot of different things at Arnold. And it's like Carl said when he was talking about Duke and Tulane a little bit earlier, where nobody knows Jackson Arnold's tendencies better than Brent Venables. And when you have that knowledge and when you give a guy like that much knowledge and that much information, I think he can do some really, really scary stuff to you.
Yeah, Joshy said Auburn, or he thinks this game is going to be closer than we think. I actually agree with that. I think that this game is going to be dominated by Oklahoma, just not on the scoreboard. Unfortunately for Auburn, they're not playing Baylor. This is a real front seven. You will not be able to run the ball like they did. This is and Jackson Arnold. If Hugh Freeze was trying to ease him into throwing the ball, this is not the game to do it. I mean, he has like 65 pass attempts in 3 games. This is not going to look great for Jackson Arnold and for the Auburn offense. That being said, I do think that they have athletes to be able to make plays out of nothing, and this is it's going to be the OU pass defense versus an inefficient Auburn passing offense, because I think we saw when you go back and look at that Michigan tape, there were times where the OU secondary was beat, and they were beat pretty good. But their pass rush and their front seven was just so elite that Bryce Underwood had no chance. If Jackson Arnold, this is a big if Jackson Arnold can see it and he can take advantage of some of the busted coverages that we saw versus Michigan, I think this game looks closer than we think it will be. So I actually took OU 27, Auburn 20, but I do think OU is going to come away with it in the end.
I don't think that's a bad point, Josh, about Auburn's offense being significantly more talented than Michigan's. I think that's true. It's just to me the style of offense that Auburn runs. I just think it's one of those things that for guys like Venables, they're going to have natural and easy answers. And just the fact that he knows Jackson Arnold, he's seen him for 2 years in practice every day. For me, that's a tough thing to overlook. I think, especially when you have that much information about a player, I think it makes it really easy to game plan around. And so that's why I'm taking him a little bit more of an aggressive approach to this game. I think Carl makes a really good point about the Auburn wide receiver core. Like it is a really good one. And there is times on tape where Michigan has wide receivers that are open. So if Auburn can protect Jackson Arnold and he can see open guys, there is some explosives to be had. I just don't trust Jackson Arnold to see them because I've never seen him successfully and consistently go through reads. But you never know what happens when guys see blood in the water and they want revenge.
Yeah, I mean, and Auburn's O line isn't like some scrub O line. I mean, there's multiple mocks that have 3 of their guys in the first round.
Yeah, they're a really good. They have a really good line.
Yep. But I just think OU is gonna it's gonna be close on the scoreboard, but I think the game will be dominated by Oklahoma.
Yeah, so that's going to wrap up our show, guys. We want to give a big thanks to Carl. Did a really good job with us. We initially were planning about 50 minutes, so we took up another 20 to 30 minutes of his time. So we really appreciate that. Please make sure you guys are subscribing, retweeting, following. Go check out Ghost's post about Total Coverage Sports. There's going to be a show every day about every sport. So we're looking forward to that stuff. So go check that out and have a good